Welcome back, everyone, to the Frosty Canucks podcast. I'm your host, Jason, along with Frosty.
See you later, dickhead.
Now get back here. We have to record.
Okay.
Thank you. This week, we have quite a few topics before we get into the games we've been playing. We're going to start with the Nemesis system patent that was filed by Warner Brothers and was recently approved by the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office.
That came up like right after the last time we recorded or after the episode went live. I'm not sure which.
Within the last 2 weeks.
It's kind of like the oldest piece of news we're going to talk about this episode, but that is a real shitty thing to have happened. I'm kind of surprised that they were actually able to get the patent to go through. For a really long time, they weren't, but they kept appealing it over and over again.
Yeah.
The judge was like, fuck it, sure, have it.
Yeah, it was filed in 2016, so I think that was before Shadow of War or around the time that Shadow of War came out.
We can just Google it.
Mm-hmm.
Shadow of War came out in 2017. So they were doing it when it was midstream on development.
Because they're trying to protect their unique idea taken away from every other bloody game that they were copying.
I guess for background information for everyone. So like the big issue with patenting for game mechanics is that mechanics are like words in a fucking book. You can't patent the words in a book, but you can patent the order of the words in the book. You can't patent individual words, but you can patent the story that those words are telling, right? You can patent the way that the fucking words are organized. Game mechanics are kind of the same way. Game mechanics are used to make games. They're the fundamental core part of the experience that makes up how it functions. Because of that, patenting mechanics has been borderline impossible. I think the last time before now that a game mechanic was patented, that was successfully shut off from everyone using it by legal bullshit, was loading game minigames. So Namco Bandai had patent on that, which is why you went from every game having a minigame in the loading screen to 0 games having that. And that's the thing that just ended up fucking dying off because no one could use it. That's the real issue with this, is if one company has the keys to using a certain mechanic or game design, they'll just shut everyone else out from being able to use it, which stifles the creativity of the industry. It just holds back everyone in general. It's the same thing for all types of software, which is why you don't see a lot of software patents that go through. I think this is like a net negative.
I mean, it's Warner Brothers. They'll bully anyone into submission.
I mean, most companies are like that, so...
This is in effect from February 23rd, 2021 until all the way into 2035. You're not going to see any games like this that use something akin to the Nemesis system for a while, because
everyone's going to be too afraid to, right? Like... It's just going to disappear. This entire thing is just going to disappear. We're never going to see it, except from like a handful of games from Warner Brothers. I hope that they are not able to get this patent extended. I don't think they should have been issued it in the first place. It's real shitty.
I mean, it's for 14 years. By that point, game design in general probably have changed into whatever other new crazes.
I'll be shoving pills in our assholes, and that's how we'll get our video games.
Patent pending. But yeah, you are right. I think there are some rumors that they're going to be included in like some of the future games. It might be in the Batman Knights game.
Be in that fucking Harry Potter game?
Probably, yeah. It's going to be Death Eaters as the villains.
No, it's going to be your dumbass classmates. They're going to kill each other for fucking... Can you imagine?
I could imagine. So for anyone who does not play like a Shadow of War or Shadow of Mordor game, the Nemesis system is essentially for the enemies. They're random orc generals. So they've got like names, traits, strengths, weaknesses, and then they'll have like unique responses that will dynamically change based off of what you have been doing with that orc. So if you've died to them, they'll be like, oh, look who's back for round 2, motherfucker.
Yeah, there's like an entire 20-ish minute video by Mark Brown, Game Maker's Toolkit, before this stupid patent had gone through that talked about all of the little minutia that goes into developing this system and like how it's made, how it works kind of stuff. If you want to get a more detailed explanation than I think we have time for here. At least at the time of recording, it's his most recent video, so just go to his channel, Game Maker's Toolkit, or search for Mark Brown on Twitter, and you can find his YouTube that way, and then just watch his video on how the Nemesis system works. It's very fascinating, but it's like a way to have dynamic storytelling in a otherwise static game.
Yeah, it was definitely the best feature of the games.
Have you played both of them?
I have played both of them.
Okay, I only played the first one.
I played the second one before they patched out all the microtransactions and the bullshit Shadow Wars ending, where it was just an endless slog of rinse repeat, fight this fortress.
I have heard that it is still just as much of a slog now. It's just that there's no way to bypass it with microtransactions.
I heard they slightly fixed that, but oh well.
Oh, I mean,
Oh well.
you know, slightly fixed it instead of fixed it outright, which is what they should have done. Bunch of bastards.
Yeah, they did that as like a good PR move. Be like, look, we did the right thing.
A year and a half after the fact. Okay, who cares?
We made our money. No one. We have the Game of the Year edition with all the DLC for that $30 price tag that'll never disappear.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like we made it all for fucking money already. So yeah, well, of course we'll do the whatchamahoo's it and remove all the shit now.
The PR blessings.
Yeah.
Blessings, you fools.
Do you have anything else to add with this, or?
Not about the patent, but I did find a few funny ones that I'm going to add in our Discord chat.
The hell is this?
This is a rodent blaster. It is literally a gun tied up with a mousetrap.
I say, why is there a gun attached to a mousetrap? What the fuck? Where did you find? Is this like a random patent?
This is a random patent. I was looking at some of the crazy shit that was patented, and this is by far one of the better ones that I had seen. And then there's one more.
It is actually a mousetrap with a revolver placed in the end of it. When the mouse touches the thing, it will, instead of having the mechanism slam down on the mouse's neck and break its neck,
it just shoots it.
It pulls the gun trigger so that the revolver will shoot it in the head.
Yeah, it was
what
patented.
The fuck are these?
These are glasses that you would screw into your like bones.
Oh God!
They're called pierce glasses.
Yeah. No. Oh Jesus fucking Christ! They would go into the ridge of your nose.
If you ever wanted to not lose your glasses, well, here you go.
Man, that's like where crazy people who are really brave get piercings. As someone who wears, actually, we both wear glasses. I would never, in a fucking million years, I could live 1,000 lifetimes and I would never ever put that shit on my face.
It's almost akin to like those augments you see in like the Deus Ex video games where he's got like the Adam Jensen has the shades that come down and go back up.
I would do that because those are like not intrusive. Well, I mean, like they're less intrusive than this bullshit.
Someone has to take the glasses off when you're like, oh, my prescription. I have to keep these on for like what 5-10 years.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
This is more of a laugh. I'll probably post this on Twitter underneath or add it somewhere, but it's pretty funny. If you start looking up into patent law, it's there's some wacky shit in there.
Yeah, well, there's no such thing as an idea that is too stupid to patent. You can patent whatever idea comes into your brain. You can patent anything.
Yeah, I mean, this patent for the pierce glasses is number 7,066,592.
Yeah, see, exactly. You just patent whatever dumbass idea you have.
But no, I didn't have anything else on the Nemesis system. I was kind of looking up into weird stuff, and you've already chatted about the mini games in Bandai Namco, which that did expire in 2015.
Yeah, it hasn't really come back because...
And it won't come back because the SSDs pretty much are going to make it so that like you have instantaneous loading. So that's not necessary. So it's a dead
loading
idea.
Screen, like tips on the loading screen and stuff. Those have not been very helpful in the PC gaming space for a while, unless your game runs like complete ass cheeks.
Yeah.
Like, so for example, like BioShock Infinite and Bayonetta. So in BioShock Infinite, you get like the typical AAA tips on the loading screen. That game on my PC, not on a solid state drive, mind you, loaded so fucking fast, I couldn't read any of them. It loaded like every single level in under a second. And then Bayonetta, it puts you in like a training room between, like in the loading screens when the level's loading.
So you can't train.
Yeah, you can't train. There's no other way to access that. You cannot train in that game on PC. Because again, it shows the screen and then it immediately flicks off and puts you in the level. That's how fast it loads on like not crap hardware.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, and then like with SSDs, it's even faster, provided you have the channel. The big reason that like my computer like loaded stuff faster is because I wasn't using fucking cables from 10 years ago, which is what the old generation of consoles were using. So like the cable actually matters. Think about it like a highway with lanes of traffic. If you only have like 2 lanes of traffic, then only like 4 cars can move through at a time. But if you have like 4 lanes of traffic on either side, then 8 cars can move through at a time. The newer cables are like a 4 lane on each side highway versus like a 2 lane highway. You can move more data back and forth more quickly that way. The Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 were using SATA 2 cables instead of SATA 3 cables, which are super duper old. And that severely limits the bandwidth of what could get in and out of the hard drives. Even if you went in and put like a solid state drive into your PS4, you wouldn't get the full benefit out of it. Where just having like a SATA 3 cable hooked up to a 7.2K RPM hard drive on a computer meant that you were loading games super duper fast. If you had an SSD and you were doing that, it was like lightning speed. And then the new things that are being used in the new consoles, the M2 drives, those are also available, and they've been available for a while on computers, but I think they'll become more mainstream now that the consoles are using them. Those plug like directly into the motherboard, so the data just like it has a huge channel to move data in and out. Sorry for like the nerd side tangent.
No, it's fine.
This is why it's gonna like loading times are really gonna go down. It's just there's more room to move the data through, so it can move faster. Woo!
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, this topic went on way longer than I thought it would. Do we want to get into the next thing?
The next thing being Nintendo Direct, which happened yesterday, the day before recording.
Yeah, so you watched it live?
I did watch it live. I watched it with my wife.
I watched it with my not wife live as well.
Huzzah!
She wanted to watch it, so I was like, okay, we can put it on. It's fine. She's very disappointed.
Yeah, I have one word for it as well, and that word would be
Disappointed!
I know a lot of people who are Nintendo stans who were either or. I wouldn't say they were like jubilated about it, but they seem to be pretty happy about at least something. They walked away with like, oh, I like this and I like this and I like this.
Did you walk away with anything you liked?
Oh, fuck no. What kind of stupid ass question was that?
This is the 12th episode, so I guess after that many episodes, I shouldn't be surprised.
Well, I mean, was there anything that caught your eye at all, or were you just kind of like on the whole thing?
A game that has not a finished title.
Oh yeah, fucking! They should have just called it Final Fantasy Tactics 2 or some shit.
Yeah, so that's called Project Triangle Strategy. Fucking tentative title.
Square Enix is such a stupid company. Oh my good lord! Like, fuck me. Didn't Octopath also not have a final title when they showed it off for the first time? Or am I misremembering that?
I think you're right.
They call it like Project some shit, and then like 6 months later, they're like, it's called Octopath Traveler now.
They probably called it something like it's RPG 8 characters, the game.
Octopath Traveler name before Google. Is that enough for you to? Project Octopath Traveler was what it was called prior to. That was the working title. So maybe they'll just call this new game Triangle Strategy, since all they did last time was just drop the fucking project from it. That's a shithead name. Oh my god.
Shithead name. I did actually end up playing the demo.
What did you think of it?
So it's good.
Okay.
As someone who likes the Final Fantasy Tactics games, it definitely is that with a different story. Surprisingly, it starts you off in chapter 6 because the game is like, oh, we're going to be bouncing you around the story. These are like to showcase the game, and it even said like we're upping the difficulty so that you actually have to. I guess you won't blitz through it very fast. Yeah, it starts you off in chapter 6, and surprisingly, it doesn't just skip to the fight, and like it does go with the story. So you do get to hear some of that voice acting, and then there was more than just chapter 6, but I actually stopped after that because I was like, I don't want to spoil any more of the story, and 2 characters have already died, so. No, I'm good. I'm gonna save this for later.
That's a very intelligent thing to do with a demo, especially if you have a game that's story is more slow burny. You don't want to just start off with like the first hour of the story where effectively nothing happens.
No, I get the decision. I'm just surprised that they showed off certain parts of the story. Like, oh, there's been a twist, and here's that happening. And I'm like, okay, I mean, I guess this was in your trailer, but...
Well, they did say that there was going to be like divergent paths in the game, so potentially you could make decisions that maybe diverge from where the demo is. Though I'm always leery about when game developers say that, because I feel like whenever people advertise that there's divergent paths in their game, it's always like
very subtle.
Yeah, it's always like not really as big of a deal as they're making it out to be. And if they didn't even tell you about it in the marketing material, you wouldn't even know. Meanwhile, games that
Yeah.
actually have like wildly divergent paths don't even bother including it in the marketing because they're just like, oh yeah, this is just like one of many things that makes our game awesome, and we want you to discover that on your own.
I mean, it's definitely just another tactics games, which I'm actually very excited for because it's been so long since we've had kind of a true like Final Fantasy like tactics game from Square Enix.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who are gonna be pretty excited about that. There's a lot of tactics fans out there.
And so it's running on the same engine that the Octopath Traveler is running on. So
Yeah, it all looks fucking exactly the same aside from the
yeah,
fact that it's the tactics thing instead of shitty ass turn-based combat.
yeah, which I think is going to work in its favor,
Hmm.
or at least get you potentially interested in buying it.
Yeah, I have two friends who really like. I don't say they really like JRPGs, but like they don't despise them like I do. They both hated Octopath Traveler. They thought it was a boring, shitty game. Before the pandemic happened, we'd go for burgers every Monday. We called it Burger Mondays. Side tangent, not important to the story. During Burger Mondays, we'd always just talk about like whatever games we'd been playing. When they were both playing Octopath Travelers, it was like 45 minutes of me sitting there quietly eating a burger, listening to these two just rip this game a new asshole. And that happened for like 3 weeks straight. It was just them like being like, this game is dog shit. And I'm like, man, it sounds like you guys kind of hate this game. And the one was just like, well, I'm not going to compliment a game that's like this mediocre. I'm like, have you considered just stopping playing the game? He's like, I paid $80 for this fucking game. I'm going to finish it.
The sunk cost fallacy strikes again.
Oh yeah, I didn't bother pointing out that was dumb as shit to him, but yeah, sunk cost fallacy, it's some real evil shit for sure. But yeah, they were both pretty unimpressed with it. They thought it was a very mediocre game. Although, well, so one of them was Will. The way he described it, you could tell he wasn't super impressed with it, but I don't think he hated it. But Chris definitely did. Chris fucking despised that game. Chris was the one who said he was going to finish it because of the sunk cost fallacy.
Mm.
I don't actually know if Will finished the game or not. I know he didn't finish Three Houses because he thought that was really boring as well. Sorry, Three Houses fans. He really likes Fire Emblem. He just thought Three Houses was like really drawn out and really boring, which I can totally understand because it had all that fucking like dating persona friendship shit in it that doesn't need to be there.
Yeah, I was going for a new type of Fire Emblem game. As you've pointed out, like always, Nintendo has to have something new to the
Yeah.
table in order for them to release a new game.
Well, that and Intelligent Systems is divided as a company on Fire Emblem as a series. So half of the company is like, we want to stick to the strategy roots of the franchise because we think that's why people like it best. And the other half of the company says, no, you need to put big titty waifus in this game. Otherwise, no one is going to.
Say that.
That's not me being like sexist or some shit. There's people who have interviewed from inside the company who have said like, there are people in the company who say that you need to have marketable female characters in this game, otherwise it will not sell. That's why they include that weird romantic dating fucking rub them down thing that from Pokemon in the Fates games. And then in Three Houses, they had like the Persona style, like meet everyone and like fucking date them and all this other bullshit. And that's they're like, people get really attached to these characters if we just put in these really dumb social systems that allow them to like find their husbando or find their waifu. Actually, to their credit, with Three Houses, they did put in a number of very attractive male
Husbandos.
Yeah, so you've got your waifus and your husbandos. So it's like everyone gets to be happy. It's not just like a male gaze thing. It's like, oh, we can have some like sexy man characters in here for like female audience. I guess actually, when I say that, I'm excluding people who are. I'm only thinking of heteronormative relationships. But yeah, when you have sexy men and sexy women, everyone of every sexual persuasion, I will say, is happy that way. The hetero people are happy. The people in the LGBTQ plus community are happy, kind of, because the relationship options don't necessarily offer them much. God damn it, Nintendo.
Yeah, I mean the only ones who wouldn't be happy are the attack helicopters.
Yeah, definitely the attack helicopters. Did you say that with a straight face? You better not have.
Oh, I didn't say that with a straight face. Why would I say that with a straight face? Some of the weirdest shit I've ever heard.
So that was the highlight for you, right? The triangle. Y'all got any more of them triangles?
That and then I'm trying to blank on a name, but it's the End Something Club
Oh, the World Ends Club?
by the Danganronpa developers.
I kind of wanted to call bullshit on that because they said it was by the same people who made Danganronpa, and it's not being made by Spike Chunsoft, from what I could see.
Maybe it's people involved with it then.
Yeah, well, it's like when people are like, "Oh, like people who made Metroid Prime made that shitty Xbox game with the robots," and it was like one guy who worked on Metroid Prime 3, and he's like throwing his fucking the name around just to give it some clout. World's End Club, and it's being published by NIS. Developers, 2Q Games.
Either way, I thought it was kind of a funny twist on the formula, going, "Ah, it's a death game. Ah, never mind, JK. You're all free to go," and then you figure out what the hell happened in Japan.
Okay, here's where my confusion comes from. 2Q, that is how it's spelled. I'm not butchering Tokyo. The name is TOO space KYO. Games, it's made up of former Spike Chunsoft employees.
Okay.
Because I was like, what the fuck? Spike Chunsoft made Danganronpa. What the hell? I don't understand what's going on here. But yeah, so like it was formed in 2017 by Danganronpa's series writer, composer, and illustrator. I'm not going to try and say any of their names because I will butcher the hell out of them. And the director of the Zero Escape series.
Which I like those series as well.
I've heard good things about them. I haven't ever checked them out.
Yeah, the first one's good, the second one good, the third one tried to summarize everything, and they probably need another game after that. But yeah. No, that's the other one I'm looking forward to. Everything else, I was like, okay, whatever. But there was one game from your favorite games of the year that got, or of last year.
I know where you're going with this. I'm not surprised that Fall Guys is finally coming to Switch. That announcement was also followed by their Twitter account announcing that it was also coming to Xbox at the exact same time. There was actually a lot of announcements after the fact where they're like, oh yeah, Nintendo showed off this thing that's coming out, but it's also coming to all of these other places. Like a lot of the games that looked like they would also work on mobile are also going to like all the mobile platforms. A lot of the shit's ending up on PC. A number of titles are also appearing on like all of the major platforms. Like that EA one is going to be out on everything.
That's not surprising at all.
Yeah, the dodgeball thing.
That had me so fucking confused until I was like, they were showing that off. I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I was also confused. So I'm like, I don't understand what's going on here. There's like a Counter-Strike guy, and then a World of Warcraft orc, and then a Pixel Fairy, and then they showed a dodgeball game, and I'm like, what the fuck is happening right now? Am I too much of a boomer for this shit? Like, what's going on?
I can join you in the Boomer Club, or no, I don't think we're boomers. I think that was just a really shitty trailer.
Yeah. Actually, some people who worked on art assets for it said it was a shitty trailer after the fact because they're like, we didn't even know that our shit was being used for this. And they kind of butchered it by putting it in this trailer. It looked kind of like ass.
Oh, EA, you dumbasses.
Yeah, beautiful bastards. Anyway, what was I talking about before that?
You're talking about Fall Guys.
Oh, thank you. I think that
this won't save them.
So like the player retention rate of Fall Guys, it's dropped off the face of a cliff. The number of people who are still playing that game on PC is very, very low. If they had released then and there, I think it would have been better. But the fact that it's coming out in like
June,
summer,
July.
yeah, it's a year late. It's like, okay, you have entirely lost all of your momentum from being released. And I don't think you're going to capture the same lightning in a bottle twice. I could be wrong, but to the best of my knowledge, the net play still sucks ass in the game. There's no crossplay. So some people are asking, like, it needs to have cross. What do you call it when your progression moves from one platform to another? What's that called?
Like cross save. I know what you mean, but I don't know what.
We'll just call it cross save for simplicity's sake. Yeah, people are like, oh, it needs to have like cross save so that all my progression carries over. And I'm like, they don't even have cross play. There's no way they're going to be able to move your shit from fucking one platform to another. If they do, that would surprise me greatly. I don't know. I think that's like a little bit too late to be coming to other consoles, but I'm pretty sure Sony probably had a you can't go on any consoles for a year deal with them based on when this game is coming out on other platforms.
Probably, yeah.
Sony really doesn't care if you release stuff on PC though, so that's the only reason why PC got it at the same time as them.
Yeah. I mean, Sony's even slightly getting into the PC market with like the Horizon Zero Dawn that released last year.
Sony really doesn't view PC as competition for them. They view other consoles as competition.
Mm-hmm.
Rightfully so. But yeah, so I was like, that's probably a little bit too late. What did you think of the Splatoon 3 trailer?
What was the point? I don't even know why we need another Splatoon.
So I can see the validity for why you would want another Splatoon, but like that trailer was one of the worst trailers they showed. I was like, what the fuck is even happening? Like, is this Splatoon or whatever? Like, I thought it was a terrible trailer.
Yeah, I thought it was a terrible trailer too. I thought the whole point with Splatoon was like it's the high-paced, like chaotic mess, which they only showed after like the first like 3 minutes in the trailer, and I was like, and then they showed it for like half a minute, and I was like, that's not how you should have shown this off. But I mean,
No.
they probably don't have enough to going for it, and because it's like just says 2022, so it's still in development.
I think this will be the actual Splatoon 2, and I know some people are going to get very angry about me for saying that, but like Splatoon 2 is as much of a sequel as a fucking Madden game is. You can eat my ass if you disagree with me on that, but I am 100% right, and no one will ever convince me otherwise. It was just fucking Splatoon from the Wii U, but with a fucking one extra mode and a few extra pieces of content. And that's it. And they released it as a fucking sequel? No. I think this will be a much more substantial sequel. I hope that they actually put the interesting ideas from the campaign into the multiplayer. They probably won't again. I mean, I just don't see the point in playing that game because I had fun with it, but like all of the interesting ideas were used in the campaign and none of them were used in the multiplayer. So like once the novelty of playing like the basic mechanics wears off, you're like, well, I have no reason to play this game anymore.
Yeah, I can understand that. Besides, you don't want to have to get back into that use your phone as the voice.
Use
Yeah.
Discord for that. I don't know a single fucking person who uses their phone for voice chat on the Switch. Everyone just uses Discord instead and keeps their Switches in front of them.
I can't believe that was the fucking solution.
Yeah, it is real dumb. I guess, yeah, and the other thing is that fucking the netcode is still garbage, so that'll hamper the game a ton. Spoilers, Fall Guys is going to be even worse on the fucking Switch than every other console because the netcode's terrible and Nintendo's network doesn't work at all.
I grabbed the crown. No, you didn't, but I did.
Yeah, that'll be fun. What else was there? They started with Smash Brothers.
Yes.
So I'm not surprised by that announcement. Pyrrha and Mithra are very popular characters. They appear very frequently on my Twitter timeline. And I have learned more about them as characters in the last 24 hours than I ever had in the last 3 years. Well, I just saw like these sexy big boob anime ladies all over my fucking thing, and I'm like, all right, I can see why people like these characters. And in the last like 24 hours, people were like, what? They actually have like a really cool story. And I'm like, all right. Sure, that's the only reason you like these characters. Uh-huh.
I feel bad for anyone who thought there was going to be another sequel to that, or like a mini story or something like that for it.
Oh,
And
for
I'm like,
Xenoblade?
yeah, for Xenoblades. And I was like, no, they said they were starting with Smash, so this is definitely a Smash trailer.
Yeah. So yeah, I wasn't surprised that it was Pyrrha and Mithra. Although I feel like that's a bit of a fucking... So when people wanted Mai from Fatal Fury to be included, but Terry was, they were like, why not May? And then Sakurai was like, well, it smashes for good little boys and girls, which was like a very coy way of saying like her boobs are too big and she's like too sexy. We're not putting her in the game. But then they put like Pyrrha and Mithra in, who are not exactly, I guess they're wearing more clothing than May does. I wasn't surprised by them being included as characters.
No, neither was I.
They're very popular. I'm also not surprised they're sword characters, and I'm not surprised people are salty about that.
Yeah, no kidding. They let Sephiroth get through just because it's Sephiroth.
Yeah, he's got
like no, oh, more swords. Yeah.
Yeah. I did have a chuckle to myself earlier. So I was saying earlier in the chat, I'm like, oh, I got trap cards for later. This is one of my first trap cards.
You activated my trap card!
I saw a tweet from somebody where they were like, at this point, they might as well just call the game Fire Emblem. They just added another stupid trash-ass anime Fire Emblem character to the game. I laughed so hard when I read that shit. I don't think it was ironic or a joke either. I'm pretty sure the person was serious.
Man, futuristic Fire Emblem, man.
Well, so here's my thing, right? Like, I don't like the Fire Emblem characters in Smash. Hold on a second. Before you unsubscribe to the podcast, here's why I don't like the Fire Emblem characters from Smash. I feel like a lot of the sword-wielding characters get the kind of the shit end of the stick when it comes to their moveset. I feel like they don't have a lot of unique moves because there's only so much you can do with a fucking sword. So when you have so many characters who already have swords, it just... Like, Link feels like he's his own character because a lot of his moves are like, they're unique to him. He does a bunch of stupid shit with the sword that just isn't practical. But it's like very Link, right? You like look at it, you're like, oh yeah, this is like like the spinning move, right? That's a fucking dumbass thing to do with a sword. It's like a Link thing, right? From the Zelda games.
More on that later.
Yeah, and he uses a bunch of his different tools, and that's part of his moveset. So it's still like, it feels like the character has his own unique identity. a lot of the Fire Emblem characters just use kind of their swords the way that you would use a sword in combat. So they kind of just feel very similar. I know they have minute differences and their moves are slightly different. I'm not oblivious to that, but just like visually, it feels like they don't have enough distinct personality from one another. There's a lot of variety in the types of units that you can get in a Fire Emblem game. You can have like mages, there's archers, there's spear wielders, there's axe wielders. You know, like some of them are like thieves, some of them are like fighters, some of them are like paladin, soldier kind of things. But whenever it comes to the characters that are included in Smash, it's always the Lord characters who use swords. It just doesn't feel like the franchise as a whole is represented really well. Like a lot of the variety that is in those games just isn't on display in their representation in Smash. Pokemon has a lot of characters from its series, but like there's a diverse range of types and moves and like designs for the different characters that are included. So they actually feel distinct from one another, like they have their own character.
Right. Yeah. No, I get that.
So like, I really liked Robin because he kind of represents the mage side of things. Byleth, even though I know that people are really sick of Fire Emblem characters, at least has some moves that are reminiscent of some of the other, like the bow and the spear and the axe. Corrin has a bunch of really, really cool moves and does like the dragon transform thing from Fire Emblem, so I thought that was really cool. In general, I think that like just Ike, Chrom, Roy, and Lucina are all really boring as fighters because their moveset just feels so generic and characterless compared to a lot of the other fighters in the game. I kind of get where people are really sick of those characters. The other reason I don't like Fire Emblem characters is because all of them look like generic anime characters, because that's what they are. And Pyrrha and Mithra kind of look like generic anime characters, so I can totally understand why someone who isn't familiar with them was like, this is a Fire Emblem character.
Yeah, that's quite a mix-up, though.
Yeah, but it's just like, oh, it's just like a generic anime character. And it's like, oh yeah, that's exactly what all the Fire Emblem characters look like in 3D. They just look like generic anime characters. I thought that was pretty funny. If I didn't know who these characters were already, I'd look at them and be like, what the hell Fire Emblem characters are those? That was what I wanted to say about the Smash related stuff. Is like, I can understand why some people are pissed off about them. I think they're probably going to be a fine addition. The fact that it's a character who swaps between two different modes makes the whole character a lot more interesting than just a standard sword fighter character. I think that will add a little bit of nuance, a little bit of depth, a little bit of something to it. Gives it some spice, but yeah, I don't know.
No, I get what you mean. But speaking of people getting mad, no news on Breath of the Wild 2.
The only part of the presentation I enjoyed was that. IG Enuma comes out and I'm like, there's no way they're going to talk about Breath of the Wild. And he starts off, he's like, I have nothing to say about Breath of the Wild 2. And I'm like, I erupted laughing. I'm like, man, so many people got so excited there as soon as they saw him. And then immediately just crushing disappointment.
Do you think like he was told that the internet's blowing up on this, you have to like the day before, they're like, you have to address it, and they're like scrambling just to get it.
Yeah, I don't know.
He's just like, why the fuck am I here?
Well, he was there to talk about Skyward Sword, but it's like you can't come on and talk about Skyward Sword and not. Oh, sorry, Skyward Sword HD. But you can't not talk about Breath of the Wild 2 because everyone's like, Nintendo's a stupid company, but they're not that stupid.
Okay, I guess that's a good point. But yeah, they announced Skyward Sword HD. Woohoo!
I was like, there's no way this is going to have traditional button mapping. And I still consider that to be correct. I know that some people would say, oh, but you don't have to use motion controls now. But like the entire game was built around having motion controls. So it doesn't have a standard control still. You have to use the right stick to swing the sword if you want to play with like standard controls. You still have to actually like do something. It's just instead of the right stick controlling the camera, I guess if you're locked onto an enemy, it'll let you control the swipe of the sword. So it's not perfectly traditional controls. I imagine people are still going to complain about that, but like the entire game is built around having those types of controls. Most of the enemies just stand and don't fight back.
Yeah, it'll probably be more or less the same. And it's fucking full price.
Yep.
$60 American, 80 Canadian. Went pretty much everything that got announced, even like the Mario Golf Super Rush game that looks I thought it looked kind of bare bones. That was $80 too. It's like,
okay, I disagree with you on that. I thought that looked like a fully fleshed out game.
Okay.
Just with all the modes and everything they were announcing with what was in the package. So if you're not into Smash and if you're not into playing a bunch of remastered old games, the only game that Nintendo has for you in the next 6 months is Mario Golf, which comes out in June.
Which is not for me. I'm not much of a golf fan. I've tried I think it was the Game Boy Advance one or something like that, and I didn't like it.
The people who like those games really like those games. I have a considerable amount of polish. I'm not big on golf either, so I can get that. They're pretty all right games from what I've read and heard from people. And then yeah, that's it. No Bayonetta 3, which I'm surprised anyone even thought Bayonetta 3 was going to be talked about because Hideki, how do you say his name?
I don't know.
Hold on, I gotta look this up. Hideki Kamiya tweeted out, he's like, there's going to be no news. We have nothing to say. So, and that wasn't like a bait and switch. He was being serious. He's not one to mince words from what I've seen. And then Metroid Prime 4, man, I don't think Nintendo should have even announced that Metroid Prime 4 was being developed because then they could have shit canned the project and they wouldn't have to deliver on it at all. They binned what was there and then they've had Retro supposedly working on it since then. But like,
well, I mean, it got announced around the same time Breath of the Wild 2 got announced, and we've seen nothing.
we've seen a fucking JPEG. Breath of the Wild 2 at least had a cinematic trailer.
True, yeah.
Metroid Prime 4 had a JPEG, a logo.
It was the Elder Scrolls 6 of Nintendo.
Yeah, I think that was actually announced at the same fucking E3.
I think you're right. There was a lot of JPEGs at that E3.
Yep.
Anyway, did you have any more trap cards for this?
No, those were my big things. I did think it was funny how many of the games they announced were like fucking ports of games from like the fucking SNES or like the Ninja Gaiden one. I'm like, isn't that like a 360 game?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, all right, sure, that's a big get for Nintendo getting a fucking 10-year-old 360 remaster on the Switch. Woo!
Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot new.
So this kind of like exemplifies why I don't value the Switch as a console, like a legitimate single console to own, and why I moved away from owning just Nintendo consoles and basically just own a fucking computer now. If you don't really like all of the first party stuff that Nintendo's putting out, basically get like the fucking bottom of the barrel stuff that they come out with, right? Like it's like, oh, you got some like these remasters of like NES games and like you got Mario Golf and that's and like a new Smash character. And it's like those are supposed to be like the big things that tide you over until one of the fuck Splatoon 3 comes out. And then that'll be like the big thing. Oh wait, didn't Bravely Default, isn't that coming to Switch as well?
Yeah, but that was already had a release date in February, and they glossed over it by saying, "Hey, there's a trailer. Go watch it."
Yeah. So that's I guess that's something you can play as well. Although I thought the first Bravely Default was terrible, but you know, I don't know. I just like can't get invested in a game that requires you to replay the same part of it for more than half of the game's runtime. I say that, but like I play roguelikes a bunch, but roguelikes are actually fun and it makes you replay the same part of the game over and over again and it's not fun.
Anyway, we've been talking about Nintendo for quite a bit.
Yes. And we'll talk about Nintendo some more. With the first viewer question, segue. My buddy Nico asked a question. More of a generalized question because I always ask my buddies for if they have any questions they wanted me to talk about on the podcast. And Thomas and Maz usually provide something. A nice, actually really interesting topic. So, which game in your best of all time list would still make the cut if it was released as is today? Example, imagine Super Mario World never came out. Nintendo releases it today in 2021. No extra polish. Nothing has changed. Is it still awesome?
Yeah, I have I got one game on my list.
Super Mario World was going to be what my fucking answer for that question was, but I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I think I know why you're going to say that. Guacamelee from Drinkbox Studios, who are Canadian-based.
That's a more modern title.
It is a more modern title. I think it's the unique art style in the game that sells that for me, or like helps me to make that conclusion, because it's kind of like it's timeless, because it's the cartoon like goofiness, kind of like akin to Paper Mario, because yeah, you can release that kind of as is, especially like the Paper Mario.
Yeah, actually, I didn't even think of that, but Paper Mario would work as well, because like if you just maybe not, because it's like if you assume that it would be HD and work in like an HD resolution instead of like not being HD because it came out in a time when HD wasn't even a thing, then maybe.
Okay. I mean, I think there's still quite a bit of polish for the Paper Mario Thousand Year Door. I think that.
Yeah, that's specifically what I was thinking of, not the original,
yeah.
Which would actually look like dog shit because it. Have you played that on a 1080p display?
I have.
There's so much artifacting.
But yeah, Guacamelee, just because of its art style, it's simple to get into because it's just kind of aping Metroidvania like stuff with its kind of level design, and then the combat is good enough, and I think that would hold up.
I was gonna say, like what was even asked in the question. I think Super Mario World maybe. So part of why is that pixel art is like part of the indie renaissance right now. So like a ton of games have really good pixel art. I still think by today's standards, what was released on Super Mario World holds up. It's still really good pixel art. The only thing that I think would be kind of weird and would be a knock against it is the fact that Mario Maker and Mario Maker 2 exist now. So because those games already exist, there's like no reason for Nintendo to release another 2D Mario game. Because I feel like the fact that they gave their players the tools to make Mario levels means that like there's no real reason for them to put out a 2D Mario game. So I think in that regard, that would maybe be the only like major point against it. Other than that, I still think that the gameplay is pretty rock solid. It's got a lot of the fundamentals of what make modern day Mario so good. To me, I know some people out there are like, oh, Super Mario Bros. 3 is like the first really great Mario game. And to those people, I say, you are wrong. Super Mario World was the first great Mario game, and every fucking great Mario game that comes after that game stands on the solid foundation that that game created. My whole reason for that is that like the Mario World physics and the way that Mario handles and jumps is a little bit different in World versus 3, and World is a lot closer to what modern day Mario is than 3 is. 3 is the fucking floaty ass NES version of Mario. Ugh. Y'all who like 3 are wrong. But yeah, so it's not like a really strong answer, but it's just like that's like kind of the only thing. Because like a lot of games, the issue is that if you like release them without updating anything, there's just like so many new games that have like modernized and removed shit that doesn't need to be there. Like lives and platforming games aren't really a thing anymore because why would you even bother? Modern conveniences as far as how inventories are handled or how RPG systems work, a lot of it's been streamlined to just get rid of a lot of the annoying chaff that's in those games, to just kind of like speed up a bunch of stupid shit that took too long to do. Although there's a number of games that still have too much stupid shit in them, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah, I think you'd really have to go with something a little bit more, because like Guacamelee is only from what, like 2011, 2012?
I mean, that's still 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I'd go with the Paper Mario Thousand Year Door. I played that like 2 years ago, and it still held up wonderfully.
I agree. Do you find when you go back and play a lot of older games that you like see the cracks in them and you see like, oh, this is like some old bullshit?
Yeah, from time to time. A good example of that would be the first Uncharted on the PS3.
Yeah.
It had a lot of issues, and then when they released the Nathan Drake collection, the developer went back and said, "Oh, hey, all those things in like 2 and 3 that were way better,
Yeah, we just put them in one.
They fixed that, and they made it like all kind of like, I wouldn't say the same, but close enough, like where it was all kind of streamlined. So when you played all the 3 of those games, it was kind of more or less
Yeah,
the same.
that's always nice. I think one of the biggest issues with Uncharted is that in Uncharted 1, whenever you pop out a cover, you're fucking never aiming at anything.
Yeah, which they fixed in the.
Yeah, I know that's like the biggest improvement they made across the fucking remasters is that you can actually like aim the gun while you're behind cover and then pop out and shoot someone in the head.
Yeah, playing Crushing on a PS3 versus the PS4 was a much easier cakewalk.
Yeah, I bet it was. Paper Mario is a good example. Like it's Thousand Year Door anyway. That game like still holds up remarkably. I still think it's like one of the best RPGs I've ever played. And I'm not saying that with a hint of irony in my voice either. Like I'm actually being serious.
Well, there's a lot of depth to it because there's the style system that you can use to power up the special moves. So like if you jump on the enemy and then like press the A button in the middle of it, you might get like Mario might do some sort of flashy move, which makes the audience all like happy and cheers a little bit more.
Well, even just something as simple as like your basic moves, right? You have like a jump and a hammer. Because of that, there are enemies that are really weak to one of those moves, but not both of those moves. So whenever you're dealing with like a Koopa, you want to jump on them to knock them on their back, and then you can like come up and hammer their stomach when they're like knocked over. Or like if there's a flying enemy, you jump on them because they're a flying enemy. Or if there's an enemy with spikes, you have to use your hammer on them. Because of that, there's not like a single solution that just works on everything. So you're always having to like think about what is the best move or what do I do in this against this particular enemy. which is more than can be said in like 90% of RPG combat systems. But it's amazing how just having like that simple, like just have that like one decision that the player has to make between like these two basic moves adds like just any amount of depth where normally those games are just like, oh, this is my strongest move. Just click this button and I win the fight. I said that was the case for like Nexomon, right? Where I was kind of like bored by the end of the game. So I'm like, oh yeah, I just click the same fucking move every single time. And then I won every fight.
Yeah, rinse and
Whatever.
repeat.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have like a huge amount of depth that comes out of that, like additional layers on that by having the badge system there, which allows you to customize instead of having a skill tree that's entirely you choose a skill and then you're locked into it forever. It's like, okay, you have skill points that you distribute into different types of skills, and that gives you different abilities. And depending on what types of challenges you face in different areas, you're able to just be like, oh, fuck this skill's entirely useless, and you invest those points into something different, which again keeps you thinking about your strategy and how you're doing things.
Yeah, this boss I can't use the jump move on. Let's get rid of all the badges that are jump related.
Yeah.
And then put them back on. It could benefit from like I don't think it was in there, but like if you had like this is a set.
Oh, like a loadout system?
Yeah, loadout system of some sort.
Yeah, that could be neat.
That would be my only complaint kind of on that is like, oh, I'd like to have that kind of a setup so I could go, this is my pure jumping one, this is my pure hammer one, and then the combination of the two.
I don't think I changed around my badges that often or that vigorously to where I would do it like that. I have like one thing, and then when I felt it was obsolete compared to another option, I just switched to that other option. I also invested very heavily in like not HP. More points in the fucking mana to like flower points were the mana in that game, and then like a lot of points into the fucking badge points, which is like the skill points. So I could do like a lot of powerful attacks, but I would die very quickly if I missed blocking. So I was like, oh, I was playing like a total glass cannon, which I'm sure as soon as like Ian from Adventure Rules hears me say that, he'll just be like, oh, classic Frosty. That is a defensive strategy? Hell no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess maybe Paper Mario, 1,000-Year Door as well. All right, I normally go first for this next part, so we're going to do you first. And we'll get into the games we've been playing this weeks.
So I played Control, the Ultimate Edition, because it was on PS Plus for February, though I already purchased my copy. Man, that is a very, very bizarre game, to say the least. So you come to the Bureau of Control, and they're in the middle of this outbreak by this kind of force that you don't really understand. And through some events, you become the director of said bureau, and you are basically tasked with fixing the problems with the bureau. Mostly with dealing with objects of power, which they're funnily named Oops. These objects of powers, once you've kind of calmed them down, they'll give you extra powers. So some of them will be like launch, some of them will be like levitate, evading, and then other powers that you can find out for yourself if you decide to play this. But there's a nice balance of gunplay and using the powers because each one's on its own cooldown. So if you run out of gun and then you're waiting for that to charge, you start like firing off with the launch ability, throwing like objects like grenades or stuff within the building at the enemies. One thing I did actually want to talk about, and this wasn't, found out later it was added post-launch. There's this thing called Assist Mode, which has the ability to modify a bunch of the settings to help you if you're not so good at the game. I didn't require this during my playthrough, but I did turn it on when I was cleaning up some stuff in the game because I wanted to kind of try it out. So there's some stuff like you can change the damage modifier so that the enemies are hitting you like only 90% of the damage they would do, like 80%, 70.
Okay.
You could turn on immortality mode, which pretty much protects you from everything except fall damage. So I kind of found that to be a little bit funny.
Suicide by jumping off the fucking building.
That I found, and I was just like kind of surprised by that. I was like, what? I
That
had
is
immortality.
that's genuinely funny that's like this fall damage still happens.
Yeah. Though if you end up turning the damage modifier to 0, you can fix that as well.
Okay.
There's one-shot kills that basically make you like a god, so you can just start sniping every
Fucking
enemy if you really
fart
felt
on
like
an
it.
enemy, they fall over and die.
Pretty much. There's a bunch of like stuff that can help the player if they're having issues or they're not that good at shooters and they want to experience the story of Control.
Is the story worth playing through? It sounds confused.
I mean, it's a bizarre story, and like I see, this is hard to say if I enjoyed the story or not because for me it was more the gameplay loop, and then the story was just kind of there. There's one mission in particular that's like mission 9. That level's awesome because it's basically a big kind of Inception like piece kind of level. The rooms shifting around a lot because in this bureau it has the ability to like kind of shapeshift. So there's a bunch of lore within the universe that's pretty funny. So there'll be one room that's full of post-it notes, and then there'll be a document in there, and it's like, yeah, we don't know why this room's like multiplying the post-it notes. This is therefore now designated as the post-it room. There's this one guy who writes this like angry letter to someone in charge in the bureau going, I worked for like 10 years and I can't even get a toilet in the executive room because like it's teleported out. They don't know where it went because the building's so fucking weird.
Game sounds very confusing from a
It
story
is very confusing with the
perspective.
story. Yeah. It's an experience, I'll say that.
Okay.
If you have PS Plus, it's worth giving that a shot. I did play on the PS4 Pro, and I did experience quite a bit of lagging and the frame rate dropping.
Oh, that happens on PC too. That game is optimized like ass cheeks.
Yeah, that's not surprising. If you'd get out of pause, like the game would like stutter for like 2 or 3 seconds, and you could still move the camera, so you'd be like disoriented into where the hell you're going.
That game uses a shitload of particle effects, and it has ray tracing in PC, and it'll have ray tracing on the version for the new consoles.
Yep.
So that's just like a new way of mathematically calculating light. But it uses a lot of particle effects, and it uses a lot of lighting effects, even in not the new gen the current gen versions. It's just like very, very graphically intensive for honestly not really a good reason, but whatever. How much did having fully destructible terrain, how much did that add to the experience, would you say?
Not a whole lot. There's some stuff that's like hidden behind walls that you have to break, but
That's like the real reason that is in there, aside from just look at how interesting this is. Graphics, woo. For a graphics snob, I have very strange priorities.
For you, it's always 60 frames, right?
Yeah, for me, it's just a fucking frame rate thing. The game can look like a fucking PS2 era game. As long as it runs at 60 FPS, I'm Gucci. So, Control, I don't know. It sounds like you have a very confused thumb in the middle for this game instead of a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
I guess if I had to give it a number, 6 or 7 out of 10.
Okay. Thomas is going to be very angry. He really liked that game.
I mean, it was 8, but then when I started sitting down going through it, I'm like, it was fine.
Amazing how when you think more critically about the games that you play, you'll enjoy them less.
Well,
this is the real reason why game journalists don't think critically about the things that they play, because it makes them less fun.
Yeah, we're learning.
And man, I already know this. I've been writing about fucking video games for 3 years now. Coming up on 4.
So I'm on break.
Yeah, so I was going to say, so you should have more games to talk about besides just Control.
Yeah, so I played that before I finished up with work. And then EA Play had a promotion on for $1.50 Canadian. And I was like, there's a few games from EA I'd like to play. So starting off with Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. For the most part, I really like this game. It's light Dark Souls, in which the enemies will respawn if you go to a save point and heal.
That's kind of whatever. To me, that's not really a Dark Souls thing, but I guess that idea really got popularized when Dark Souls did it.
Yeah, that's kind of why I say it like that.
No, that's fine. A lot of people would say the same thing. I'm just fucking being a pedantic piece of shit like I normally am.
Yeah, and that's got a bit of Uncharted in it with the climbing and the exploration. There's a surprisingly high amount of tombs that you'll go to and sort of figure out stuff about the Order, because I believe it's in between 3 and 4 essentially, because Order 66 has happened and all the Jedi have either been killed or scattered. So
okay,
you play as a character named Cal in the story.
Cal?
Cal. C-A-L.
C-O-W? What the shit?
Don't talk about his weight.
Okay, so Cal the Jedi.
Cal the Jedi. He's not used the Force in like 4 or 5 years after Order 66. He does use them because of some story event to save someone, and then the Empire gets some sort of tip and finds you, and then your adventure begins. You're traveling to, I think it's about 7 planets that are. It's not like the traditional open world kind of ones. They're very linear in their overall design.
Have you played the Tomb Raider games, specifically Shadow and Rise?
I have, yes.
Is it like that?
No, because they're smaller in scale because it's the 6 planets or
Well, because like they have, I want to say like 2 or 3 kind of like bigger maps in those games, and then the rest of the maps are like basically straight hallways.
there's a few straight hallways, but okay, maybe a little bit akin to Tomb Raider.
There's like the levels are much more focused on like platforming and puzzle solving. So because of that, it's not completely open. It's like you're shot down a very specific kind of trail to the next area, and it might have like a branching path at some point, but it always like starts and stops at the same spot. And it feels more like a curated level in that way instead of like go out and explore fucking bullshit nothing like Fallout does.
Yeah, it's not like that.
It's more in that kind of vein than the fucking big open bullshit.
Oh yeah, it stays pretty far away from being open world.
I wanted to understand that.
No, that's fair. So through your adventure, you'll get some of your powers back after you kind of sort of fixing Cal's relationship with the Force because he's been kind of dormant with it. He's unlearned what he had learned, to say the least. Though the game gives you the double jump, I think, a little bit too late. I wish that was kind of way earlier on, but I think I understand why based off of some of the design of the
If
level.
games have double jumps, they should be given to you at the beginning of the game.
They should, but I playing like the later levels to do all the collectibles, I could see why it was breaking some of the stuff. Like I was hopping around and just like skipping parts. So some of the levels wouldn't have been very well designed with double jump added early on. So I understand why, but I do agree with you. Double jump should be near the beginning, if not like the first third of the game.
Yeah, such an unoriginal power up. Just fucking give it to us as quickly as possible. Build your entire game around it. Don't worry about it. Just if you want to double jump, just build a whole fucking game around the double jump. Don't.
But it's
fucking...
in like it's in the latter half of the game.
Yeah, that's a dickhead thing to do.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's not a lot of boss fights in general in this game.
It's more focused on exploration.
It's more focused on exploration, and then just kind of like general enemies, because these enemies can hit you pretty damn hard.
Okay.
Because there's 4 difficulties. The last one being the Jedi Master. I did the second hardest difficulty, which is kind of like the enemies hit you for half the damage of like master difficulty, or a little like 60% of master difficulty. So there's like the difficulties are like for how much damage you deal, how much damage they deal, and I think the pairing timing can be different. So
Loosened up on some of the easier difficulties.
Yeah, on the easier difficulty. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, there's not many boss fights, which is a little disappointing because you like fight the same one 4 times, like, and progressively you actually start chipping away at their health. They're kind of like the big baddie of the game, and you fight her near the end, and then I won't really say anything else other than that because the rest of that will be spoilers.
Okay.
It was kind of like, oh, I'm fighting you again. Great. Like you built this one character that's got different move sets for their first fight and their second fight and whatnot. But I don't know, it kind of felt like that character dragged on a little bit too long, in my honest opinion.
Okay.
Then with another one of the games for EA Play was Sea of Solitude. I don't want to talk about that game because it's a piece of shit. So moving on.
I have heard nothing good about that game from anyone ever.
I played it only because it was included with the pass, and it was 3 hours or 2 to 3 hours, something like that. It was depressing, and that's all I'm going to give the game time for in this podcast. I moved on after that to Concrete Genie, which is the other PS Plus February freebie this month.
I don't know anything about this game. I've heard about it before. Know some people like it, but those people tend to have tastes that are very far removed from what I enjoy in games. You're laughing.
Yeah, it's an interesting budget title kind of game.
Okay.
So it's got a VR mode in it.
We are off to a great start.
It can be played entirely in single player, and turns out the VR mode is not as substantial as I was hoping it was. It's kind of just a canvas for drawing on walls.
That could be cool.
Yeah, no, it is cool that you have to use PS4 movement sticks that look like dildos.
The ones with disco balls in the end?
Yeah, the ones with disco balls in the end.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you gotta use those with the PS4 camera and then obviously the VR set.
Fucking dildos.
Quite a bit to draw on walls or just draw on a piece of fucking paper, in my honest opinion.
You say that if there was a game where if it was just like a VR game where you just like spray painted in VR, I would buy that. That would be the only thing I would ever play in VR.
Okay.
Don't have the ability to meaningfully do spray paint art in my apartment, right?
Like most people.
I can't meaningfully do that in my apartment. So having a virtual space where I could do that, it'd be very nice.
I can probably explain a little bit more to that. You only have so many like kind of set designs, like stars and like apples and other stuff, so you can't really draw kind of what you want. So it's limiting.
I think there's a thing on Steam that lets you use like Valve's room scale VR to just spray paint in a virtual room.
Yeah, probably.
And I'm like, man, this is like the only thing I would ever need for fucking VR. Of course, me, the fucking artist, being like, oh yeah, I just want to do art in VR. I don't actually want to play video games in VR. So it's like you run around like a city and you just like paint on walls. Was that the game?
Yeah, you're basically there's this town that's basically been abandoned because
Coronavirus.
yeah, we can go with that. I mean, it's mostly because like the pollution, like the tourism, I think, kind of ended, and then everything kind of looks a little desolate.
Coronavirus.
Yes, yeah, okay, we'll go with coronavirus.
We should not be joking about that while the pandemic is still going, but whatever.
Pandemic's almost reached its year anniversary for fuck's
Yeah,
sake.
it's just gonna keep going forever. It's fine. This is the rest of your life. Get used to it.
Ooh, depression game. Wait, should I talk about Sea of Solitude? No, fuck that. Back to Concrete Genie. It's a good game if you want like something that's 5 or 6 hours kind of long. It's not heavy on the story, but it did surprise me later on because then had a twist and then it kind of changed up the gameplay enough where I was like, oh, this is a surprising twist. Because it went from like exploring and kind of problem solving in the environments and like young Nathan Drake, who's a graffiti artist, kind of gameplay, like very light on the Uncharted element. So that kid has surprisingly strong legs. I would have considered those legs breaking at some point. You have to be like really high up for those legs to break. Yeah, I mean, if you want something nice and short and simple, and again, if you have PS Plus, I'd give it a whirl. If you don't like it after the first hour or so,
Uninstall that shit.
Oh.
Your life is too short.
yeah, save those 5 hours or so. But yeah, overall, I enjoyed it. Been playing a tiny bit of Breath of the Wild.
We talked about this before we started recording while I was eating dinner still.
So far, it hasn't gelled with me, and then I ended up playing a beginning of Twilight Princess, and that gelled a lot more with me, and we'll see if I'm going to give Breath of the Wild a bit more of a try, because sometimes when I play games and sit on them for a day or two and then come back, I end up understanding them a lot more. But that control scheme with the Breath of the Wild is driving me a little bit bonkers.
I've never heard anyone complain about the control scheme. I took the game from Miranda. I got on the horse and I accidentally rode the horse off the cliff. And then I said, this game is stupid, and handed it back to her and walked away. What is the control scheme?
I don't know. It's trying to do a lot with it. It's just the button layout. Like you have to hold the D-pad in order to like kind of quick select the weapons and then like the shield and then the powers. For me, it's just like kind of learning it for the first time and actually kind of.
Did you say there's like just too much shit on too little space?
Yeah.
Because I have that problem with a lot of RPGs where I'm like, no, I need a keyboard for this because I need like 25 different buttons that all do something different. So I don't have to constantly like press and hold like 5 fucking buttons at the same time to get to the thing I want.
Yeah, it's something like that for now. I did get out of the tutorial area and I'm starting the real main quest line. So I'll probably give that a whirl more by next episode. Yeah, that's mainly it.
A lot of shit, man. Why do you say that so casually? I got nothing to talk about because I'm still working.
Oh, sorry. Excuse me.
Me, princess.
The hell have you been playing?
This is going to be a surprise to no one. HuniePop 2 came out last Monday. I finished it last Thursday. Fucking demolished that game. It's very fun. I had a lot of fun with it. It's everything I wanted from a sequel. HuniePop has the unique privilege of being one of the only match 3 games to ever be developed by a developer anywhere at all ever that I don't think is complete dog shit. Match 3 games are criminally simple, and because of that, I despise them. But HuniePop was given to me as an ironic gift from my buddy Chris, who I mentioned earlier. He's like, here you go, it's got boobies in it, teehee. But I actually really enjoyed it. The match 3 mechanics in HuniePop, they have like a thimble of depth to them, and because of that, it ends up being a really compelling game instead of just like not. So there's 8 different token types. 4 of them are matched for score, like raising your score. One of them increases your score multiplier. One of them gives you extra moves. One of them builds up like a mana type currency that you can use for using items, which usually have really powerful effects. And then the final one, if you match 3 of them, you just get a shitload of negative score. So you don't want to match that type of token.
Oh, there's a negative score one?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, I remember reading that.
Yeah, there's like a broken purple heart. In the first game, it just like fucking deletes like half of your score.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, it's extremely punishing. You could not match those up. Well, you can match them up like early on when you don't like when you haven't
When you
built
have
up
0.
Yeah,
Zero,
exactly.
zero.
So like the idea is that like normally you want to like try and get a bunch of heart matches. So that's the one that raises your score. You want to get a bunch of score multiplier matches really early on, and then like set up any of the items that you want to use early on that are like really essential for like whatever your strategy is. Once you do that, you start banging out a ton of matches. Each of the ladies you can date has a preferred token color that they like best. So most of your matches will be like, all right, I want to like match these things so that I can get like a 4 or a 5 token match of like whatever their favorite color is. And then when you have like your high score multiplier and you finally get that big like 4 match for their favorite color, your fucking score is just going to go from like 0 to like half of what you need to finish the level in one move.
So is this like number of moves based, or is this?
Yeah, it's number of moves. It's
Okay.
number of moves based. It's been like fucking like 20 minutes on a board. So HuniePop 2 changed around a few things, but added a shitload more depth to that system. Instead of doing a one-on-one date, you do the whole gimmick is it's called HuniePop 2 double date. So you go on like double dates. The very character who's like your tutorial companion lady, she's like, it's not gonna be a pussy ass double date where it's 2 guys and 2 ladies. It's just you and 2 ladies. It's gonna be awesome. So instead of doing the match 3 date mechanics one-on-one, you're doing it with 2 people. So they added in a stamina mechanic. So there's a stamina token type now as well. Gives like a little bit of extra stamina. And then when you're not actively matching against one of the people, they recharge stamina. And then as you make moves against them, it uses up their stamina. You constantly have to like think about who has the stamina that's required for the move I'm making. What token types am I going to match where? Because the fucking score multiplier is like per person. A lot of the times I was specifically focusing one of them for like a huge combo, and then I was using like the other one to like set up that combo. So that becomes like a huge factor in the game as well. It's incredibly deep for a game that on its surface is just like, oh, this is like a booby game. It's a very weird game because it could have totally gotten away with just being like a porn game and that would have been good enough, but it's like actually a good game and it has pornography in it.
I mean, and maybe that only works the first time, and then it helped that it had actual, as you said, depth to it.
I feel like a lot of the reason why like a lot of people really enjoyed the first game was because it had some depth to it instead of just being like roll your face on the keyboard kind of gameplay. But yeah, and there's like some dating sim aspects to it, but I thought they were weak as hell in the first game. They're equally weak as hell in the second game. The dialogue is like equal parts cringy as fuck and hilarious. It's only hilarious because of how self-aware it is. So it would normally be like super cringy, but because you're like, oh, well, like the fucking developer's clearly making fun of themselves and like everyone who's playing this game. And it's like, okay, I'm just going to have a laugh at myself for playing this dumb game. It is what it is. I know some people have taken umbrage with this game specifically because they're like, oh, the dating aspect is worse. And I'm like, the dating aspect is not worse. It's just as bad as it was in the first game. Insipidly shallow. The only reason that you're angry with it is because you're an incel and the fucking characters in this game aren't a bunch of 19-year-old women. It's a bunch of fucking like adult. While some of them are like 18, 19-year-old, but like most of the cast is like adult women. Because the idea is that like in the first game, you're like a fucking the incel virgin guy. And then the magic sex fairy teaches you how to get laid. This game is like a few years in the future, at which point like you're still like the ultimate Chad who's just going around like sleeping with women like 5 times a day. That's how this character is built up. And then it's like, oh man, you gotta like use your sexy penis skills to like save the galaxy from evil space hookers. And I'm like, I didn't need a reason to do any of this, but if you're going to provide one, all right.
Evil space hookers.
This is the way the game describes them, yes.
Did you defeat the evil space hookers?
Oh yeah, first try, I fucking demolished them.
Demolished with what?
My sexy match 3 skills.
Okay. We got to keep this podcast at least a little PG.
No, the game has like a bit of meta humor to it as well. So in the first game, when you go on like dates with Q, she's like, impress me with your sexy match 3 skills. One of the characters in this, because you can't date Q in this one, but like there's a character in this who's also like fourth wall meta breaking, and she has a ton of like really just like fucking stupid ass dialogue lines, but they actually made me laugh. Not stupid in like a bad way. It was like, oh my god, this is so meta right now. I can't even.
Nice.
I had a lot of fun with it, even though it's like real dumb. They don't have achievements yet in it, so I haven't played it even remotely as much as the first game, which I do have all the achievements in. But I looked at their blog post that accompanied the release, and they said they're adding achievements later. So when they add achievements, I will probably play the entire game again, however many times I need to for the achievements.
How lengthy is one playthrough?
It took me 16 hours to finish it.
That's quite some meat to it.
Yeah, well, I said I spent about 20 to 30 minutes on each board. I'm sure that people who are better and smarter and don't spend as long on like making the simplest moves could probably beat the game faster. Thomas is at almost 19 hours, and I don't think he's finished it yet, but he's almost there. It's a good puzzle game if you can look past the fucking boobies and the... It's probably a little bit misogynistic. I have a hard time calling it misogynistic because it's so self-aware of how stupid it is that I almost feel like it's making fun of itself too much and is like too aware of how stupid it is and actually like makes fun of like how dumb the game is to the point where it's like it falls into like kind of a parody category instead of being like, it's like not seriously talking about any of the things it says. It's like very parody instead.
The parody of porn games.
I don't know. Maybe I'm giving the developer too much credit. Feels to me like the person who made this game is like feels like the sense of humor is very much my own, where it's like a really dry, really like just like on the nose, blunt like sense of humor, which is like that's how I do fucking jokes and stuff too, right? So I feel like that's what this was aiming for. So I'm like, I'm not inclined to call this like sexist when it's like very clearly making fun of the people who would normally take this kind of shit like super seriously, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty good. Now, there is some things in it that I do think are problematic. The one character is extremely racist, like a just offensively racist stereotype. Anyone who's played the game knows exactly who I'm talking about. And there's another character who is problematic because of the fetish that they represent. And that's a topic that I am not smart enough or intelligent enough to talk about, and this podcast is not intelligent enough to talk about that topic.
Ouch. But fair enough.
No, it's a bag of worms that we cannot even begin to fucking dissect properly and talk about in a polite manner that actually accounts for the feelings of the individuals who are affected by it.
All right, I'll trust your word on that.
Yeah, I don't even want to mention it. If you've played the game, you probably know what I'm talking about. But yeah, there's like some issues with the game in that regard. So I can understand if people would write it off entirely because of that. I can understand if people would write it off because of the boobies. I think it is pretty fun. So I think a lot of people should give it a shot because it's a good old match 3 game. I talk about that for about 20 minutes. So Thomas is appeased.
As long as the sequel that you wanted.
It's very much what I wanted. I just wanted more depth from the match 3 stuff, right? So that's why I'm happy with what's there.
What else?
I have played more Star Renegade, and I think I'm done with Star Renegades.
In a good way or a bad way?
Yeah, I had to qualify that. It's not like a great way, but it's not like bad either necessarily. So I finished 3 campaigns in it.
Yeah, 'cause last week you were praising the first campaign.
Yeah, so I still really like the combat system. I think the combat system is really, really good. It's very thought out, turn-based combat. Every single move that characters have actually serves a purpose. Whenever you go into combat, you're thinking about what moves you're going to use and how you want to like use your characters and what kind of moves you're prioritizing, who can take damage, when they can take damage, what kinds of risks are you willing to take on for the rest of your run versus what kind of like shit do you want to avoid in the here and now. There's tons of macro and micro level decisions to make across an entire campaign. It's immensely fun for a limited amount of time. The big problem I have with Star Renegades is that it's a roguelike, which is normally something I really like, but the way it's paced isn't conducive for a roguelike necessarily. Slay the Spire is a game where you do a run and it's like 30 minutes to an hour and 30 minutes. Hades is a game where you do a run and it's like 20 minutes to an hour and 20 minutes. Monster Train is a game where you do a run and it's like 15 minutes to like 45, 50 minutes. Star Renegades is a game where you do a run and it lasts 7 to 10 hours.
Yeah, I can see how that would get tiring after a while.
Yeah, the campaigns are just so fucking long. It doesn't get you in the same kind of rhythm as some of those other games that are really good with that like one more turn kind of a thing or like one more game kind of feel.
Mm-hmm.
They're just such laborious, just these long ass campaigns. They just take a really long time to go through. And because of that, it's like really hard to like sit down and say, okay, I want to do another fucking campaign. After you finish a campaign, it's like you just finished like a fucking tray of like fucking Big Macs or some shit, right? Like it's just like you just ate this
Big
giant.
Macs?
I don't know. I haven't eaten McDonald's in like 20 years. I don't even know what fucking Big Macs taste like. It's like you just ate like a big chunky, like a whole roast dinner, right? Like a fucking big plate of meat, potato, vegetables, gravies on everything, including the vegetables. Fuck you. Yes, they're on the vegetables too.
Why on the vegetables? No,
Because
no, not fuck me. No.
You're a big man, Jason. You gotta have gravy in your vegetables.
That's a terrible lesson to teach people.
I have put gravy on vegetables before. Usually it's a joke, but
it's usually by mistake because it's right next to the turkey or something like that.
I've done it a few times intentionally and then said, oh man, this is delicious. I'm having a big man dinner right now.
You're a monster.
I love making fun of hypermasculinity. It's very fun.
What are you, a Sigma male?
I don't know what that means.
I don't know either. Started spewing that out like late last year, early this year. It's a grade above alpha or some bullshit like that.
Okay.
It's so fucking stupid.
Who the fuck keeps coming up with this shit?
I don't know. I don't know.
But yeah, so you end up with these like really arduous, really long campaigns that it's really hard to like do another one right after finishing the one you just finished. So you don't get stuck in that like one more turn kind of rhythm, which is a big part of why I end up getting sucked so hard into a lot of roguelikes. I still think the combat's really good. I still think the core gameplay loop is really good. It's just like not as fun to just do it repeatedly over and over and over again. So I'm kind of like, I've kind of had my fill at this point. The one thing that is a little bit shitty, well, I guess there's two things that are kind of shitty. And I'll be brief because I know you complained about me complaining about games too often in the podcast. So the first thing is that like in Slay the Spire, when you start that game up, you have one class to play and you have a limited pool of cards from that class to play. As you play that class more, you unlock more of their cards. And when you get to a certain number of card unlocks, then you unlock the next character. And that happens within the first couple of runs you'll do. And then you can play that character class and you can unlock some of their cards. And then after another 2 to 3 hours, you unlock the next class and so on until you've unlocked all of them. The same sort of shit's true in Monster Train and Into the Breach. As you play as each of the different squads, you have like objectives you can do. And if you do those objectives, which you'll probably end up doing some of them maybe on your own, maybe you'll actually have to think about and plan for some of them. You'll get these coins that you can use to unlock new squads, and that lets you choose which squads you want to unlock. In Hades, you just you'll get resources that you can spend on stuff. Some of them let you unlock new weapons to use in future runs. The point I'm trying to make here is that in most roguelikes, as you play the game, you very quickly get new shit to continue playing the game with because that's what makes the games fun. Getting new shit to play around with so you can find your favorite shit and keep playing the game with your favorite shit is a big part of playing those games. And if you just want to like play them for like not a huge amount of time, this will let you experience all the game's content or like enough of the game's content in a really nicely paced bubble. Star Renegades says fuck that and it makes the unlocks real dumb. There is 4, well kind of 5, but like 4 characters you can unlock that aren't part of the normal roster of characters you just run into. And you unlock those by capping out the relationships between specific characters. Why?
I don't
Why
know.
don't you just get them from just playing the fucking game like every other character? I don't understand the point in this. Because the relationships also unlock like alternative versions of each of the classes, and those will have like a few moves that are different and maybe some different base stats. There's 4 classes that you just don't have access to until you max out the relationship between 2 specific characters. And that makes less sense to me. The alternative classes, they're kind of like a nice reward to get. Not essential, but it's nice to have them there. The straight up new classes, to me, that shit's unacceptable. You should just unlock those from playing the game. I only unlocked one of them of the 4. I had to look up what the other 3 were, and on my final campaign where I was like, okay, I'm kind of done with this game, I unlocked the second one only because I looked up what characters I actually had to like relationship together to get that.
Yeah, that is a bit bizarre.
It's like not something that you would necessarily do organically through playing the game either. Like the first one definitely is because the characters responsible for it are in the starting party and you don't get to choose who's in the starting party in your first campaign. So when you have those 3 characters and like the 2 characters have like a 4-heart relationship, you see that as a player and you go, oh, this one's bigger than the other one. Maybe there's a reason that this one's bigger and I should max out this relationship that has 4 hearts instead of 3. And when you do that, the reward for that is, hey, here's a new character. But it's not obvious what matches give you the other 3 character classes. So you could spend an inordinate amount of time trying to figure that out and only unlocking the subclass options for the different characters instead, which would be pretty frustrating, I think. I don't think that's a very good system for having like new content locked off. I think that's pretty shitty, especially because you have at the end of a campaign, you'll have a party of 5 characters and there's only 13 of them in total. So having 4 of 13 of the characters locked off behind these really arbitrary unlocking criterias that by all accounts aren't even that easy to do. It feels really weird to have that because you'll end up seeing and exhausting the available roster of characters and getting to know them really, really, really well very quickly. And there's content that's new that I haven't experienced that I just don't want to grind out, for lack of a better term. And then on that kind of same vein, I don't think the relationship or the story or character writing is very good in the game. I think the game would be better if it was just not there because it's very repetitive. And it makes the runs feel very repetitive when you see the same dialogue over and over again.
Did I ever tell you what the definition of insanity is?
It doesn't help that Hades came out and also has like everyone fucking cross that off your Frosty bingo card. And Slay the Spire as well. I mentioned that too. It doesn't help when Hades came out and it had just an entire dictionary of dialogue, right? Like there's so much dialogue in that game that does not repeat. And when it does repeat, you don't notice it as often because there's so much dialogue in the game. That's like the new gold standard that every roguelike is going to be judged against when it comes to narrative stuff because Hades is so good in that regard. When you go on a run with these characters and they say the same fucking dialogue every single run, it gets very repetitive very quickly. So that's kind of my 2 negatives with Star Renegades. Still think the combat's really good. I think it would be much better if the game was paced a little bit better, if the campaigns were just 2 to 3 hours instead of the 5 to 7, sometimes 10 that they can be. I think it'd be a much easier game to like play over and over and over and over and over again, getting that same replay rhythm that I do with other roguelikes as it stands. I've kind of gotten my fill. I'm sort of exhausted from playing it. I feel like I've seen most of what the game has to offer. It's neat. I'd recommend it to like people who want good turn-based combat. Like I just a pause to think about it, but yeah, it's just that's it. It's just if you like good turn-based combat, this game has really good turn-based combat. All the options, they're meaningful. You have a reason to use them. There's no just like win buttons on certain characters. You got to think your way through combat scenarios. Like I said, I don't think it has as much replayability as some of the other roguelikes I've recommended and that I've played, but I think it's worth playing a campaign or 2 or 3 at least. It's a fine game. Could just use a little bit more spit and polish, I think, is the big issue. And then Hitman 2. So here's the big thing with Star Renegades is I'm playing Hitman 2 like it's a roguelike. That's how I realized what I was missing from Star Renegades. I have played Hitman 2 for 21 hours. I have finished the first 2 levels. That's it.
That's what happens in a Hitman game.
Yep, I played the first level for something like I think somewhere between 7 and 8 hours, and then the rest of that time was spent on the second level. So the first level is very simple and very easy. It's like a tutorial-y type level that kind of eases you into what's going on. I spent a lot of time dicking around in that, and then I played the first real level in Hitman 2, the Miami level. Oh man, there's just so much shit to do in that level. It's so densely packed. There's so many different things to learn. But once you learn the level layout, it feels so compact. It doesn't feel like this massive space anymore. When you first go in it feels like you're trapped in this giant like clusterfuck that you don't know where anything is. But after you've spent 10 hours in the level, you go in, you know where all the shit is, you know where like all the sight lines are, you know how to line up all the kills, you know where all the cameras are, you know where all the fucking security is located. You become the hitman, right? You go in and you fucking you don't need to do any bullshit. You don't need to use the thing that lets you see through walls. You don't fuck up at all. You just walk in, you kill both your targets in 15 minutes, you walk out, no one sees you, you get a perfect fucking score. And that's so satisfying. But along the way, the journey to that involved doing
a lot of trial and error.
Well, yeah, it's like you go in and, okay, I accidentally killed like 15 guards because I did. Or I got caught on security camera a bunch of times. Or this kill I thought might work didn't end up working the way I thought it would. So I improvised and did some other bullshit instead. Here's some goofy ass shit that I heard an NPC talking about. What if I do this thing that they kind of were maybe hinting at is a possibility? Or I'm going to shoot a fucking shark model off of the ceiling and crush 2 random security guards with it because I think that'll be funny. And it was.
Yeah, the game gives you a lot of tools to play however you see fit.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to just dick around with and figure out all of those different, like where and how you can use all those tools and where the different scenarios that the developers have, because they have a lot of these NPCs who will very loudly talk about, oh, hey, did you hear about so-and-so? Oh, I did hear about so-and-so. And that'll clue you into like, okay, there's a kill that I can do here.
Don't forget this car malfunctioned 3 times yesterday. Don't fuck up for Mr. Stilvetto. I don't know. Can't remember his name.
The last name is Knox. But yeah, it's like, oh, don't touch the fucking car on the show floor or Mr. Knox will be very upset. And that triggers in my brain, okay, let's fuck with the car. So that some guy says like, oh, one of the junior mechanics on Sierra's team got an earful from the head mechanic yesterday. I heard he didn't even show up to the paddock today. And you're like, oh shit, what if I impersonated him and went to the garage for the pit stop and sabotaged her car? Or when you find out like she doesn't come in first place naturally. So when you hear the guys talk about, oh, like don't touch the valves, they're being held together with like duct tape and a dream. And so if you adjust the fireworks, you might cause an accident. But then you're like, okay, but how do I get Sierra to get first place? So then you like sabotage the other guy who's in first place at his pit stop. And then Sierra wins. She'll go up on the stage, but you sabotaged the fireworks already. Ho ho. So then those go off and like fucking kill Element. There's just like so many neat ways that the developers have like planned for you to do stuff. And then there's some things that like they haven't necessarily planned for you to do, but they're just born out of the systemic interactions that come out of that game. And those are equally as interesting. There's just like a lot of really good shit in Hitman 2. Because I played the first, I played like Hitman 2015. I had fun with it, but I wasn't convinced that I would want to play another Hitman game. I'm glad that you convinced me to play Hitman 2. In the intervening years since I played Hitman 2015 and now, I have played a shitload of roguelike games and gotten really into playing games with like short, repetitive gameplay loops where you play them over and over and over and over again and get very good at playing them and understand how the systems interlock to the point where you can demonstrate a high degree of proficiency and mastery over it. And that is how Hitman is meant to be played. I am really enjoying playing Hitman 2 way more than I enjoyed playing Hitman 2015 by virtue of the fact that I have a greater appreciation for how to play the game in its most fun way, which is to just play it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, doing all sorts of crazy shit and just experimenting with what the level has on offer until eventually, as I said, you go through the level and you get a perfect score. I didn't even go into the second level expecting to get a perfect score on some of my runs, and I got a perfect score on some of my runs because what I happened to do resulted in no bodies being found, never being spotted, whatever the fuck the other ones are.
No security cameras, no whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah. Like accidentally got like 5-star rating on some of my attempts through the level.
Mhm.
It's really good. I'm looking forward to playing the other levels. I think this is a game that's going to take me several weeks to finish by virtue of the fact that I'm only playing it on weekends when I'm over at Miranda's house because I didn't want to download it at my house as well since it's huge. I think it'll be like a several month affair for me to just work my way through each of the different levels. But I mean, in that way, it's not so bad because it's like, just like Saturday. This weekend was this level, and the next weekend will be the next level.
Yeah, you got quite a few left.
Yeah.
And then if you do end up playing, because you can play the original levels in this, but it's called like Hitman Legacy.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that.
Well, then I think you got about like 5 or 6 levels
Yeah.
left that exclude the multiplayer kind of one.
I'm not going to do multiplayer stuff, but yeah, when the game found out I had Hitman installed, it installed like an extra 40 gigs, and I'm like, that is kind of unacceptable. This game itself is 50 to 60
gigabytes.
gigs. Yeah, when it installed Hitman 1, it got up to 100, and I was not expecting that. Especially because I started playing Hitman 2, and then it started downloading Hitman 1. I couldn't understand how it was downloading 40 gigs to a game that I was playing. And I only found out after I like rebooted it. I was like, oh, okay, Hitman 1's levels are in here now. That's dumb.
That's funny. It's a little bit more convoluted on PS4.
Yeah, on PC it just saw that I had the fucking thing in there. And it's like, oh, let's download this for you. And I'd be like, I'd rather not have you do that, please. But it did it anyway.
That's hilarious.
Fucking whatever. Okay.
And that's it.
I believe that is it, yes.
Thanks everyone for joining us this week on the Frosty Canucks. You can follow us on Twitter at the Frosty Canucks. You can follow us anywhere this podcast is available, such as Anchor, Stitcher, or Spotify. And you can also follow me at Javim Animation. I've been playing quite a bit, and I need to actually catch up on some posts about what I've actually finished playing. So look forward to that. And Frosty.
You can find me on Twitter at FrostyLight. So I post everything to Twitter. You can find my art only on Instagram. That's just for like artsy stuff. You can read stuff I write on my blog at frostylight.ca. There's this past week I wrote about HuniePop. I think it's great. I would be really happy if people read that article because I feel like a lot of people didn't read the article because they were afraid of not safe for work content, and there's no not safe for work content in the article. Thank you very much. I just write about why I like the game a lot. And I had my first guest post. I'll call it guest post. I had my first guest post go up on the website. That was not something I was exactly planning on having, but a buddy of mine, Mr. MKL, approached me with something that he thought would work as written content on my site. And we spent 3 weeks editing it, and now it's on the website.
Woo!
I think that's the hardest I have ever worked to make a post appear on my website, and I didn't even write it. I have a much greater appreciation for the editing that Tristan used to do for all of my shit back when I wrote on viewport.com, or viewportgaming.com rather. Yeah, so that was a pretty big thing, and I would appreciate if people read that too, because I put a lot of work into that, and it really came together quite well. I am pretty happy with it, and Mike seems pretty happy with it as well, so... Twitch every Friday. Come join the shit show at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, where we draw stuff and we play video games. Never both. Always one or the other.
All right. Thanks everyone for listening, and stay frosty.